You are listening to We Saw the Devil, an investigative and conversational true crime podcast that deep dives into fascinating criminal cases that are solved, unsolved, or ongoing. From America's Lori Vallow to Germany's Armin Meiwes, we examine and discuss the world's most shocking cases. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to follow us online. Check us out at WeSawTheDevil.com and We Saw the Devil on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget, you can become part of the show by backing us on Patreon. Hello everyone, you are listening to We Saw the Devil. I'm Robin, and today's episode is on the confirmed active serial killer operating out of Stockton, California. There's been some big news in the last couple of weeks here, and I want to put this on everyone's radar, so we are going to have a quick episode on what exactly is going on in Stockton. Before we get into that, let's just get some quick housekeeping out of the way. You can find the website at WeSawTheDevil.com. From there, you can find all of our social media accounts, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. If you're enjoying the show and want to financially back it, you can find the Patreon. And as always, if you haven't yet, please take just 5 seconds out of your day and leave a 5-star review. It helps with so much, including sponsorships and admin side and getting the podcast really out there. So all of that being said, let's go ahead and talk about Stockton. The Zodiac Killer murdered at least 5 people in the San Francisco Bay Area of California between 1968 and 1969. Police officially recognized that 7 people were shot, but 2 survived. In letters to newspaper, though, the Zodiac Killer claimed to have been responsible for 37 murders. 54 years later, and 82 miles to the east, Stockton, California is now in the grips of a mysterious masked murderer. And Stockton is much different than San Francisco of the late 60s. Instead of crime scenes at scenic lovers' lanes and so forth, Stocktons have been along railroad tracks in some of the most dangerous areas of not only the region, but the nation. It's a city that already, to some degree, breeds tragedy. You have a 1 in 79 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. In comparison, California as a whole is 1 in 227. In terms of crimes per square mile, the U.S. median average is 26.9 crimes per square mile on average. Stockton, 215. According to the FBI this year, in 2022, Stockton is more dangerous than 95% of United States cities. Violent crimes in Stockton are 229% higher than the national average. And we can further break that down, like 22.4% of Stockton, of the residents of Stockton, they live in poverty. That's 1 out of every 4.5 residents. That's incredibly high. And especially after COVID, a large number of people have been pushed into homelessness due to the high cost of living in California. Much like I saw in Portland, Oregon when I lived there just a couple years ago now, there are whole blocks and areas that are just huge, vast tent cities, or tents just lining up the sidewalk for miles. Stockton also has the same, like so many cities in California right now. But that's not necessarily the full picture. I mean, Stockton also has some incredibly wealthy areas as well, and middle-class neighborhoods. There are entire streets lined with old trees, well-kept homes. They have a regional history museum, live music festivals, and hundreds of authentic ethnic restaurants. And some of California's best-kept secrets are in Stockton. I'm in so many different food groups, as everyone knows at this point. I'm a huge foodie, and you would be surprised at how many people actually suggest restaurants in Stockton, like literally on a daily basis. But still, crime is really, really, really bad. Gangs, violence, poverty, poor education system, a system that then exploits the poor, homelessness. So it's really tragic that this already downtrodden community, largely, is experiencing this. And what do I mean by this? Well, as I said in the intro, it appears per the Stockton Police Department's own admission that there is an active serial killer in the city. Considering that police have linked the homicides by ballistics, it appears that he's already out-killed, in terms of number of victims, the Zodiac Killer. So for this episode, we're going to talk about the Stockton serial killer who is currently active and killed his last victim, at least that we know of, on September 27th. On September 30th, just 2 weeks ago, the Stockton Police Department held a press conference during which they announced that they believe 5 homicides in 2022 are linked. Let's just go ahead and listen to a clip of this now. This is the Stockton Police Chief, Stanley McFadden.
I first want to address the comments regarding Stockton having a serial killer. You know, that's what's been messaged. That's the big question that we keep being asked. By definition, these shootings are a series of killings. And so we do believe we could have potential serial killer. That's how we're going to treat it as such. At this time, we don't know if it's a person or persons. As I said before, we have absolutely no evidence that connects a person or persons to any of these incidences. But we are still receiving tips, and we still will continue to review those tips, and hopefully more information will come forward.
Quote, "The shootings are a series of killings, so we do believe we could have a potential serial killer. That's how we're going to treat it as such." This murderer, according to the Stockton PD, meets the official definition of a serial killer. And I don't know whether you guys heard the previous episode where I discussed the potential serial killer in Portland, Maine. I lived in Maine for almost 10 years, and soon before I left, almost in 2017, there were a lot of deaths in the Portland Harbor and the surrounding areas, way more than normal for Maine. I watched a local online news article from the Portland Press Herald, and I actually saw it get edited live in real time in literally like 10 minutes after it was first released. The original interview was a verbatim statement from the police chief in which he admitted that police considered the deaths linked. And then, all of a sudden, within like 10 minutes or so, that entire section, that entire quote was gone. It had been removed. So information like that isn't something that police just want to throw out into the wild. That is a card that they hold very close. So Chief McFadden, in this press conference, then goes through a timeline of the murders, which I'll be covering shortly. Towards the end of the press conference, he announces that police have a grainy video of a person of interest. And he describes a very important feature here. That person's walk, his gait. Let's listen to what he says here.
Also with that, we also want you to notice just how upright this person's posture is. You know, I like to think we all have a normal gait and walk about us when we walk around, but this person's posture is extremely upright and it's noticeable. That's something else that you'll be able to notice on a video once we show that. With that, as far as interconnecting these cases, we done that through ballistics, and once you start working with ballistics, the process gets very slow. It takes a long time to confirm the information, and it takes a long time to get those official reports. But we do have ballistic evidence that are linking our cases, in accompany with some video footage as well.
McFadden describes how they linked the cases via ballistics. And he's not wrong, as it does take quite a bit of time for that level of analysis. Interestingly enough, he also says that it's linked by video evidence. I haven't seen this reported or discussed anywhere, but to me, that indicates that they have video footage of the potential suspect at least 2 different scenes. I mean, I could be jumping to conclusions, who knows? But in press conferences like these, police, particularly the chief, when they're out in front of the camera, especially when it's a case of national interest and concern, their speech tends to be very deliberate, walking a fine line of, providing enough information for public safety and tip lines, but still holding their cards largely to their chest. There's also an unprecedented $115,000 reward for information leading to this person's capture. And then just listen to Chief McFadden's breakdown of the murders that have already occurred.
We have 7 cases linked, and I'm just going to give some quick stats on these cases. We find that the average age of the victim is 42. We find that the sex of the victims are mostly male. We also find that the races are mostly Hispanic as well.
7 cases linked. Average age of the victim is 42, and the race of the victim is most commonly Hispanic. let's take a moment to go over the investigation and killings as they happened and were reported to police. So on April 10th of last year, 2021, a 40-year-old Juan Vasquez Serrano was fatally shot at roughly 4:18 a.m. on Harmon Avenue in Oakland, California. The Oakland PD was actually alerted to the shooting via its ShotSpotter gunshot audio detection system, which is a truly amazing piece of technology. If you have a second or want to learn more about it, Google it. It's fascinating. It's called the ShotSpotter gunshot audio detection system. Unfortunately, by the time officers arrived on the scene, no one remained there, and Juan Vasquez Serrano was already deceased. And this is also the only known attack to take place outside of Stockton. Just 6 days later, on April 16th, 2021, 46-year-old Natasha Latour was sleeping inside of a tent at the intersection of Park and Union Streets in Stockton. She heard the sound of someone walking on gravel, so she exited a tent to get a better look to see who was coming. Here's an interview that Natasha did with local Stockton media network 209 Times.
I went over to Park and Union, the railroad tracks, a place where I always used to go, and it was about, 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And the train sound came, so I knew a train was going to be coming. And then the train started to come towards me. I mean, I was on the side, and then a man came around the corner, or whoever came around the corner, and they already had the gun out. And they just started shooting.
What at that moment, what caught your attention to turn around and see the person pointing a gun at you?
So I was standing sideways towards the bushes, away from traffic, and it's a one-way, and I heard like gravel. It was before the train was rolling, and so I turned and I said, "What the fuck?" I mean, and there was no words exchanged. Didn't say anything. Didn't come any closer. Just started shooting. I just saw flashes. I mean, and then knowing that it was either the moving train or like some ridiculous high-ass fence that I couldn't even attempt to climb with no slats in the, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, and behind me an open field. So I ran towards them knowing that I'd have to get closer to the street if I wanted to survive. And then as I did that, then he, got down like a movie star pose. You know what I mean?
So she heard someone approaching her tent. She went outside to look and was immediately met with a man holding a gun. He already had it out. He then just begins firing at her. And because she was stuck between a fence and a passing train, she ran towards him, knowing that she had to get closer to the intersection if she wanted her body to be found. I mean, that's some immediate survival instincts kicking in right there. When asked by the host how she would describe the shooter, here is what Miss Latour said.
So how would you describe the person that shot you?
I described him, the same way that I described him to the police way back in April, actually the first time I spoke with the police was in May. So he had on dark colored pants, not black, but dark colored pants. I don't know if they were jeans or sweat material. He had an open hoodie that was either navy blue or black, and he had a COVID mask on that was worn like perfectly. And it went across the bridge of his nose right over here. I didn't see the ear part. And so the top part of the hood was like fitted, kind of, but then like loose. It looked like the damn Unabomber, man. It looked like the Unabomber, except for without the glasses.
We then fast forward a year and 3 months to July 8th, 2022. 35-year-old Paul Yaw was gunned down at 12:31 a.m. in the 5600 block of Kermit Lane in Stockton. A neighbor actually heard the gunshots and immediately called police. Mr. Yaw sadly died on the way to the hospital. His mother, who had been estranged from her son for multiple years due to his addiction issues, reports that he had been homeless for almost 5 years. A month later, on August 11th, 2022, at 9:49 p.m., roughly, 43-year-old Salvador Debuty Jr. was shot and killed. Officers found him with a gunshot wound in critical condition. Even though the police started first aid and CPR, he died at the scene, which was, coincidentally, about 5 minutes from the first Stockton shooting. Debuty was a married father of a young daughter who had also fallen into addiction issues and was experiencing homelessness at the time. 2.5 weeks later, on August 30th, 2022, 21-year-old Jonathan Hernandez Rodriguez was fatally shot at 6:41 a.m. while sitting in his car at his apartment complex on the 800 block of East Hammer Lane. 3 weeks later, on September 21st, 2022, 52-year-old Juan Cruz was gunned down around 4:27 a.m. in the 4400 block of Manchester Avenue. And finally, just a couple weeks ago, on September 27th, 54-year-old Lawrence Lorenzo Lopez Sr. was shot and killed at 1:53 a.m. on the 900 block of Porter Avenue. He was a musician and independent contractor who had fallen into a bout of homelessness. He leaves behind 6 children, ages 16 to 38. 7 victims, 6 dead. And disclaimer alert before I mention this next one. This has not officially been linked to the Stockton serial killer. Again, I repeat, this has not been linked to the Stockton serial killer by the police department. I don't want misinformation to get started, but it would be lazy of me not to mention this. On August 25th of last year, August 25th, 2021, 38-year-old Tanya Wales was found shot to death in a parked car at the Polo Run apartment complex on the 8100 block of Palisades Drive. It was in a dark area, and she was alone. Again, coincidentally, where Tanya Wales was found at the Polo Run apartment complex was just a really quick 5-minute walk from where 21-year-old Jonathan Rodriguez had also been shot at his apartment complex. Again, her death has not been connected, but due to the timing and MO and location, I mean, you can't deny that it's suspiciously similar. So what do all of these confirmed victims have in common? Kind of a lot, actually. The areas in which these shootings have taken place are dark, and they don't have really any camera coverage, like hardly at all. The killer usually attacks in the middle of the night or very, very early morning, and it's in areas that are fairly run down or have a high homeless population. Also, nothing was stolen from the victims. Some of their wallets actually still contained cash or valuables. Nothing was stolen from their tents or bags. The killer apparently walks right up, shoots, and leaves. The Stockton PD has also stated that 4 of the Stockton homicide victims were walking alone, and a 5th was in a parked car. So what are we looking at here, guys? I mean, I'm not a criminal profiler, nor will I sit here and pretend to be and throw out a bunch of random theories. It's horrific, though, that someone would be so bold in the age of the internet. I mean, we have home security, businesses have CCTV, Ring doorbells, social media, cell phone video. I'm sure that the police department and definitely the FBI at this point, they're both working hard at reviewing video footage, doing a profile analysis. There's just so many possibilities of what could be going on here. There's even a popular theory going around that he's the duck walk killer, a Chicago serial killer who killed in a very similar manner, and he also had a very strange stride. The duck walk killer crimes are also unsolved, so did he up and move? You can watch the endless number of comparison videos online, as duck walk was also caught on camera, like on CCTV footage walking, showing his very, very strange gait. To me, though, it's very clearly 2 different people. Definitely would be interested in what you guys think if you compare the 2 videos. Do you think it could be the same person? I think we're going to actually see a lot more news surface from this over the next couple weeks. I honestly would not be surprised if there are a whole host of additional victims. It's not uncommon for serial killers to target disadvantaged communities or demographics. Look at Gary Ridgway, who murdered sex workers. Jeffrey Dahmer, whose victims were primarily gay men of color, usually black. And the handful of killers who have been arrested for killing homeless people at all. The reason why they do this can be multifold. But there's a very similar response by police, and unfortunately, all too often, apathy is probably the most accurate descriptor for that. Natasha Latour, the Stockton killer's surviving victim, said that police considered her case a drug deal gone bad, and that's why they didn't even speak to her after she got out of the hospital. She had to quite literally force them into speaking with her, and she was shot 10 times and had 7 bullets removed from her body. 3 are still floating around in there. It's horrible. But I wonder how many other victims they treated the same way. They saw a Hispanic woman who was experiencing homelessness, and she also had addiction issues. So they just saw it as a drug deal or sex work deal gone bad. How much of a delay did police bias cause in getting into the real investigative work here? Like, would these homicides have been linked a little bit sooner had police not gone in with a bias? I don't know. Don't have an answer for that, obviously. But I will definitely be covering this. To the people in Stockton, if you're listening, just be careful. Try not to go outside in dark areas, obviously late at night, middle of the night. For those of you who want to more closely follow this case, there's a Facebook group that's actually pretty fantastic called Stockton Serial Killer Community News and Information. And it has a lot of Stockton locals in it who are actually kind of mobilizing boots on the ground in terms of sharing information and sharing resources. Some people are actually outfitting the homeless with like personal alarms and pepper spray. They're going and giving them pizzas and food and stuff like that. Others are trying to get them in off the streets and taking them into missions. It's absolutely heartbreaking that this is even happening. But that's it for today, guys. I just wanted to get this really quick episode out, letting you guys know what's going on in Stockton, California. It's absolutely terrifying. You know, there's so much going on in the world on a daily basis, from the political news to the war in Ukraine to the stock market to local crime. And it seems to never, ever end. But this is definitely one that you want to keep on your radar. I'll actually be back with a new episode tomorrow, guys. So thank you for listening. Until next crime.